And what's up, everyone? We got an interesting segment today. Not only do we got an NCOC statement of why motorcycle clubs are not gangs, but we also have the VFW. They just put out some rules down in Texas, and these kind of have something similar in common. So let's get to the article here. There has been a war going on between law enforcement and motorcycle clubs for years. This it has indeed. The war has been one-sided. Up to this point in time, only law enforcement has been on the offensive. This war is not a literal physical conflict in the traditional sense, but rather a war of words, a war over perception. And anybody who knows anything about the club stuff, yeah, it's been a pretty big war between each other. And as it said in the next line, the government authorities have been using the media to apply the gang term to vilify and persecute motorcycle clubs and their members. And I've been saying forever, that the propaganda law enforcement puts up out there, it changes hearts and minds. And I never understood why when something happens that the clubs don't put their side of the story out in the media, because there's always two sides of the story. And this ain't 1970 or 80s, guys, man. This is 2019, and social media and the media controls all the narratives. Just look at what's going on in this country today. Anyway, authorities understand those that control language control much in society, just like I just said. Indeed, the war of words and perceptions they create will be determining factors shaping the future of motorcycle club culture, because words have tangible impacts. Well, hopefully, just going through this just now, man, it sounds encouraging that the National Confederation of Clubs and the Council of Clubs is going to start going on the offensive and hopefully get both sides of the stories out to the public. Just reading a little bit. In fact, a gang label has caused some law enforcement to unconstitutionally use membership in a motorcycle club as probable cause or reasonable suspicion for investigation or arrest without any particularized or specific justification. The practice of targeting and arresting members of club for possession of legal firearms for their association with organizations labeled gangs by authority is alarming. And you know what? I'm a big believer in the Second Amendment and stuff. I don't even like concealed carry stuff, even though I have one. But, yeah, I can see where they're coming from on this one. Just because you're wearing a 1%er or you're affiliated through a support club, that don't give law enforcement a right to take away your rights as a citizen of the United States. Let's go on. NCOC, representing the interests of thousands of motorcycle clubs and their member, is adamantly opposed to using the term gang to describe motorcycle clubs. All media outlets and public officials should discontinue the practice. Now, that's where I'll probably break with this statement, is because when you're out there, how can I say this politely, out there doing gang stuff, like the violence, like the shootings, like the beatings, like the selling methamphetamines. I don't know how many stories we've been told on this one. But when the clubs don't step in and police themselves, what do you think the citizens are going to think when they see that kind of article? Well, yeah, it must be a motorcycle gang because they're out there doing gang stuff. That's where the propaganda war is raging, is you got these few people out there doing this stuff, and the clubs, they stand behind them. Worse yet, they don't get their side of the story out. Anyway, the most reliable data disputes the accuracy of the term. The demographics of club culture are alone enough to indicate the gang label. Most motorcycle clubs and their members are politically active, dedicated to charity, not criminals, and many serve in the U.S. military. Just as the highly publicized criminal actions of a few officers doesn't mean all cops are bad. The criminal acts of a few do not justify applying the term gang to members of a motorcycle club. That's simply inconsistent with the First Amendment. We're going to go into that right there, but here's a hard question to ask, and this is a debatable question. Now, we know law enforcement's involved in how that stuff went down in Waco, Texas. But what does the public see when there's 9 dead and over 20 injured, and the video of the CCTV is everywhere for people to see what happened went down there? That's a question. Now, does clubs do that or does gangs do that? Let's go on. The term gang in the First Amendment, the term gang is in the legislative or legal arena has a much more specific definition than in social or media circles. In the legal content, an individual must be directly connected to criminal activity of the alleged gang before they are considered a gang member. In fact, when prosecuting a member of an alleged gang, evidence of criminal wrongdoing by other members of an organization that don't involve the defendants are properly excluded by the federal rules of evidence because such evidence is unduly prejudicial. Now, right now, the Mongols, they're trying to go after the patch. They just got convicted of RICO for the entire organization. Now, granted, it was from Doc Cavazos' time, but there was other incidences down in Tennessee where you're talking hardcore money going back and forth in the drug trade and stuff. So, again, that argument, there's two sides of it. Let me know in the comments section what you think. Because this is something that needs to be debated, if you ask me. This interpretation of the term gang or gang member is consistent with the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. On the other hand, the term gang being applied to an individual for mere membership in any organization is unconstitutional. Motorcycle clubs, including clubs labeled organized or criminal gangs by authorities, are First Amendment protected or associations. Well, yeah, of course they're protected. Anybody can be a part of any organization. Restrictions solely based on association in a motorcycle club violate the First Amendment. There is no evidence that by merely wearing motorcycle club colors, an individual is involved or associated with the alleged violent or criminal activity of other motorcycle club members. Totally agree there, but the problem is, motorcycle clubs don't police their own. You got guys out there doing all kinds of stuff, and it reflects back on the club. That's where you're losing the propaganda war because you're not putting out your side of the story. And, again, you're not policing your own. So, it's hard to argue that. And in fact, the Supreme Court has long disapproved government action denying rights and privileges solely based on a citizen's association with an unpopular organization. That was Healy versus James. To permit law enforcement officers to impose restrictions on any person who wears the insignia motorcycle club without regard to or knowledge of that individual's specific intent to engage in alleged violent activities committed by other members is anti-ethical to the basic principles enshrined in the First Amendment and repugnant to the fundamental doctrine of personal guilt that is hallmark of an American judicial. Well, there's also been the argument that, since the clubs are using the First Amendment and constitutional stuff, and again, this is a debate. When it comes to protocol, many feel that clubs are taking away other individual rights to wear what they want to. And this is a question that I really like to hear the clubs, respond to. Are you not taking away other people's rights to do what they want to do? Are you not putting people under protocol and threatening these people with harm, or they can't do this or can't do that, by telling them, no, you don't have First Amendment rights because this is the way it's supposed to be, this is the way it's been. And quite frankly, a lot of people nowadays, they don't buy into that stuff anymore like they used to. and they feel like they're free as Americans to practice their First Amendment rights as well. Just, you know what, I'm playing devil's advocate on both sides here, trying to go right down the line and answer, what's going on here. Then they go into the demographics, simply motorcycle profiling is an epidemic, which I've said before, with 99% reliability and 1.4% of margins. Motorcycle club members are employed. Most gang member are not. Now that's where I'll have to disagree because I grew up in the gang scene, and a lot of gang members I knew had jobs. Okay, you only had a few that had all the big money and stuff like that. I would say half and half, man. With the gang members and club members, but I do know club members are hardworking, blue collar guys, and I'll have to still argue that so are some gang members. Uh, Academic and government studies have long established that gang members are less likely to be employed and more likely not to participate in the labor force. Yeah, that coming from a government thing, using that, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't trust many of that. Uh, let's see here. Only 3% of you guys can read that as I go. I'm going to go slowly so you to see what's going on. And then it goes into the employment demographics, of what they're talking about here. Employed, working full time, 68.82%. But this is from that study. Motorcycle club members vote, gang members don't. Depends which gang you're in. A lot of the gangs are set up just the way motorcycle clubs is, unless you get into they got round tables, they got freaking commissions and all that type of stuff set up. And that's one thing I never understood about clubs. If you ever got the one percenters on a commission, it'd be unstoppable. That's just me. Political activism is protected under the First Amendment. Motorcycle clubs and their members are very politically active. Again, I got to argue against the other port, especially in Chicago. A lot of gangs, they're hardcore in the politics, man. Hardcore. 38% of motorcycle members are vets, which we love to death, and we know that's how a lot of the club scene got started, was with our vets. So, pulling over a veteran and stuff like that, I don't know. Only 1.7% of club members are convicted felons. Well, if that's the case, that 1.1% of convicted felons, or what they're out there doing to bring, the bad stuff onto the club, that's something that needs to be fixed. It really does, because they're dragging everybody else down. And incidences like the shootings, the drugs, and all that stuff, well, that 1.1% is what's putting the propaganda out there and allowing the cops to do what they're doing. Have you been convicted of a felony? I don't know where that's coming out. But final thoughts, they said the First Amendment to the Constitution protects an individual's right to associate with whomever they choose and express that association free from government discrimination or persecution. Now, let's take that right there and apply it to protocol, okay? You are saying, well, the First Amendment protects you from government discrimination or persecution. You see where I'm getting at here? Persecution? I know the traditions. I actually, respect the traditions and stuff. But I also believe you got to evolve with the times. People are not the way they used to be. You know what? If somebody wants to wear a stupid patch, that they made up, and I'm not calling patches stupid. I'm just saying if they want to wear a stupid patch that they just made up, the blows MC or whatever, who cares? Is it worth the time of putting your members in the joint for going after some guys that don't have nothing behind them? They're just out there trying to ride. Now, I see it if they put a 1%er diamond on. But all the others, I don't see it. And it actually kills your argument, protocol stuff. It kills it. Because, again, on one hand, you're saying you guys are being picked on. But on the other hand, you're turning it around on another class of people. If you want people support, then there has to be some evolution on this protocol stuff, because when I did a poll, and we did a lot more than just what you've seen, only 30% of people support clubs. That is worrisome for the club scene. What I always say is take a look at the manufacturer's numbers right now with sales, especially Harley Davidson. They are in bottom. They can't get new riders. Well, if they can't get new riders to buy bikes, who do you think's going to join the clubs? And, something that I never thought would ever happen was clubs riding with LE. With the associations they got started up, and the reason why they started those, like the Law Abiding Motorcycle Club Association or the Alliance, is because everybody was tired of the protocol and being told what to do, being dragged into the politics. A lot of people nowadays cannot stand the politics. So if you go to one guy for, a blessing for protocol, well, now all of a sudden your whole club, don't matter if you go national or local, is against the other club. And people don't want no part of that. The gang label is a convenient way to characterize and vilify thousands of people simultaneously. The only statistical data and evidence suggests that the gang label has applied to motorcycle clubs is highly inaccurate. So the problem is you got to go out there and put your side of the story on. And I'm glad to see the NCOC out there actually doing it. But it takes more than the internet to do it. When something goes down, somebody's arrested, the clubs have to get out there, put their side of the story and say, you know what, he ain't part of our stuff. We don't condone it. We don't do any of that stuff with this type of what's going on, this criminal activity. Until clubs start doing that, in the media, in the public, actually starting to talk to people, perception's always going to be around. The NCOC asserts that 87% of actual gang members did not vote in the 2016 presidential elections. I like to, like to see that. Yeah, it might seem I'm more on the gang side, but I lived that lifestyle more than the club scene. I came up as a kid in that shit. And, again, a lot of gangs have commissions, and yeah, there is a lot of voting that goes on within the gang scene. And far more than 1.1% of actual gang members are convicted felons. Now, let me ask you this question. Clubs are accepting a lot of gangbangers into their ranks. I know many clubs that are doing it. What do you say to that? Because then what you're doing is it's not only 1.1% or 7%. Now you're bringing in the gang element, as you claim, and it just brings up the numbers within the club, So anyway, that's mine. I hope I played it down the middle on that one, giving both sides something to debate. But one troublesome thing of where the propaganda war is being lost is right here out of the VFW, man, the Department of Texas, Veteran of Foreign Wars. And number 2 just came out. Now, this is their rules they passed down there. And this should worry clubs if these veteran organizations are doing this. And just shows you how the propaganda war is being lost on part of the clubs have. 2, gangs. Gangs including any motorcycle groups, units, gangs not officially affiliated with the VFW or other veteran service organizations are not allowed to wear or display their vest or colors at any Texas VFW post or business operation operated by or on the behalf of the post unless voted upon by the post membership at a regular or special meeting called for such purpose. Specifically, any gang, including motorcycle group, unit, gang, or its individual members that is identified as a 1% organization or is listed in the annual Texas Department of Public Safety Texas Gang Threat Assessment is prohibited from wearing their vest or colors at any Texas VFW post or business operated by or on behalf of the post regardless of post membership approval. This includes the group or unit hosting and attending an event or fundraiser, even if it is for another organization on VFW property. Now, that just goes to show you how the propaganda war is being won and the shortfalls that the clubs have had getting their message out there. Now that the VFW is doing it, and that's one thing the clubs do not understand, I don't think, without getting your side of the story out there. What the people are seeing is the Leo's side of the events. They're seeing it in the media, which you claim, and I understand the claim that they're using the media to put it out there. But people who vote and people who sit on juries, I've said this a million times, see that without the other side of the story. So you might want to think of this, again, we don't talk to media stuff because it's killing the club scene. Now, I'm an independent and, yeah, I support a lot of clubs. I support motorcycle clubs' rights, but I have a hard time, and I think I always will, with why motorcycle clubs don't freaking kick the trash out to the curb. Yeah, I know the brothers thing. Well, they're a brother. We can't abandon them. But my question is, and this has been talked about a lot, is when somebody leaves a club and they used to be hardcore and tight, the club never has time for them anymore because they left that freaking club. So do you think it really matters with kicking some bad apple to the curb? A so-called brother wouldn't have put the club in the spotlight and wouldn't have brought down the heat. Just saying. So, yeah, the VFW in Texas, and let me again ask this. I understand the Leo actions in Waco. We covered it the whole time. But do you see where people are coming, from when you got this big melee happening out there? People, we seen the fight break out on the TV, on the surveillance film and all that stuff. Yeah, the cops have a lot of things. They shouldn't have even let the Kazakhs in to that. They knew something was going down. They should have prevented it. But at the same time, that whole melee on the club's part shouldn't have happened either. So, again, let me know what you guys think about the NCOC statement, as well as this new VFW orders down in Texas. Thanks for watching. Let's get the debate going.